In our last lesson, we learned that failure is a habit. If that didn't blow your mind, I'm not sure you're ready to be a Brazen Creative. I'm just being honest. I mean that sincerely, really. Brazen Creatives are not only unafraid of failure, but they expect it. And this is kind of hard, and I understand that. But they expect to learn from it, and they expect to be in the midst of mind-blowing goals that challenge their imagination and continually force them to ask, how am I ever going to do that? That's the mark of someone who is unabashedly on the way to success as they define it. You've heard me talk about amplified mediocrity and how anytime we're feeling mediocre, it's really my excellence demands ideas over carefully rehearsed excuses. That feeling can't become normal to us, and rather than avoid the negative, remember that from our last lesson. We also learned it in caution and risk. We also want to actively pursue our ikigai. Pursuing positive is always the surest way to avoid the negative. And as Brazen Creators, we're in tune with our ikigai, and we begin to organize our lives around it. It's not only our norm, it becomes our life expression, present in all things. As we organize our lives, we begin to adapt, and it'll help us stay on the leading edge of our creativity. I'll give you a tool that helps me on a daily basis. It's a highly flexible, highly adaptable tool that can be implemented in almost any aspect of our lives. Whether it's athletic or spiritual concerns, the idea here is that you'll be armed with something you can personalize and use immediately. And it begins to help you change the details of your life toward the central nexus that ikigai should become. Let's get started, shall we? To achieve as a Brazen Creative, we have to see ourselves setting goals that align with our ikigai. This is a must for a Brazen Creative. But the process of goal setting was once deeply entwined with the thought that the scale we attacked at the beginning of this course has been flawed from the outset. In the lesson called Take Me Out of Mediocre, Please, we understood how important it was for us to get rid of the scale that someone else had given us that helps us define success as they understood it, and help build ourselves a scale for success as we define it. In this lesson that I call Tap the GASFIELD, we're going to talk about what GASFIELD means and how the old methods by which we attained our goals does not suffice, and instead how we need to think with a new lens, the lens that we've created for ourselves, and how it's so important that we're comfortable with failure as we design it into our process from the outset, the process that allows us to succeed. GASFIELD is an acronym that helps me remember the process I follow to achieve anything I say I want. I'll review each of the letters in the acronym and then drill into each one deliberately. GASFIELD is an attempt to embark on a systematic way to achieve the outcomes we say we want. In other words, it's a way to harness and channel our energy so we know where we're headed. Brazen Creatives value free thinking. And one of our identifying marks is the investment we make in free thought. To get there, though, we're going to have to be able to rein in our energy to pursue something specific, and GASFIELD does just that. GASFIELD, goal, attempt, success or failure, innovate, elevate, lesson learned, and finally, discussion. Listen, as a graduate of the Air Force Academy, I was goal-oriented and driven. I had to be. There was always more mission than resource. When I was on active duty, I helped ensure aircraft were flying safely. And I always knew what was on my plate on any given day. I had a ton of goals to accomplish, and I had to draw in every tool and every tactic I could use to make it happen. And believe me, I was incredibly successful. But like we learned in that very first lesson, that was someone else's scale. I should have been happy, but at the end of my career, 20 years in, I was all right. That's the problem. In GASFIELD, the G stands for goal. And when I was in the Air Force, goals were handed to me. If you follow these rules, if you do these things, you'll get your next promotion. I did the things, I followed the rules, I got promoted. 2 words, bow ring. I'm a Brazen Creative. And I don't have to let someone else dictate for me what success looks like. I will do that on my own terms. Even in the Air Force, I could have done it. But I didn't think the way I'm thinking now. It took me a lifetime to figure out how to set my goals up that were in line with my ikigai and use that as the central node for all of my activity. Everything I do should be an expression of ikigai. When we looked at caution at risk, we had to think about how we set aside old thinking because risk and caution were preventing me from setting goals like a Brazen Creative would. Goal setting is a risk-taking exercise for a Brazen Creative. very clear about that. You'll be saying things that you didn't believe you want to say, and you'll be trying things that you didn't believe you were wanting to try. And that's the A in GASFIELD, attempt. Once you set that goal, and you're a free thinking and you're a brazen creative, you're going to make an attempt at it. And you're going to use everything you have. You're going to throw yourself at that thing. You're going to try your hardest. You're going to make it work. And the attempt, the experiment will have us creating. It'll have us experimenting. It'll have us sweating. We'll be like, holy moly, how am I going to do that? And that's the goal of a brazen creative, is to be thinking so big, your ikigai being so all-consuming that you want to set goals that make you stretch your mind, your body, your spirit. You want to get out there and you want to say, I don't even know how I'm going to do that, but you're willing to attempt it and you're willing to fail. And see, I'm gonna be for real with you. We brazen creatives, we don't do things halfway. Because if we go halfway, we'll be like we were with the mountain, halfway up. And if we turn around and look, we do have a better view than when we were at the bottom of the mountain, but we're not on the mountain to stay at the midpoint. We're on the mountain to go to the top. And so it is with our goal. When we make an attempt, we may fail miserably, but that's part of the process. The goal was so big that the attempt forced me to change many of my daily habits to get it done. I was totally inspired by the goal. I was consumed by it because my ikigai was at stake, and I could not express my ikigai. I had to express it. I had to get it out. The S and the F in GASFIELD are together. Once you have your goal and you make your attempt, you assess whether you succeeded or failed. Success is as you define it. It's the goal that you defined. You made the attempt. You either reached what you said you'd reach, or you did not reach what you said you'd reach. And we learned in the last lesson that failure is a classroom, a place of learning. We don't define ourselves by failure. We're brazen creatives. We're bigger than that. We don't do that anymore. We define ourselves by the learning it takes. We learn and we grow, and we begin to see ourselves as people who are trying to fail on the way to success and not failing or succeeding. If we're really working on it, there are three ways where failure is going to instruct us in this model I call the GASFIELD. First, did you fail because your attempt was misaligned to your goal? If you wanted to build a home, did you buy hammers, nails, boards, and bricks, or did you contract for trash services and interior decoration? See, those are important, but they're not going to help you build a home. Your goal needs to be aligned, your attempt needs to be aligned with the goal itself. And if your goal is in line, if your attempt is in line with your goal, then you have to take a look and see if, in fact, this is the second of the three areas we'll look at if we fail, why it failed. Was it because perhaps your attempt wasn't the right thing to do, even though it was in line with the goal? Maybe the timing was off. Was it an earnest attempt? Was it the kind of attempt that you put your whole heart into, or was it something that could have done without it? See, if you're going back into those old behaviors, you'll know. And the third thing to think about in failure is maybe the goal itself is just not right. Maybe it's not the right time or the right goal for you to express your ikigai in that way. That's okay too. Part of the process of setting a goal, attempting it, and succeeding or failure is understanding that the goal may be incorrect, the attempt may be incorrect, or the measure for success may be incorrect. That's okay. That's part of the process. Going through the GASFIELD helps us figure it out. And so when we tap the GASFIELD, when we really drill into our goal and the reason why we're achieving them or not, the reason why we're succeeding or failing, it's because we learn from our failure and our successes too. But in dissecting our failure, we really get ready for the next attempt. And the neat thing about the I in GASFIELD is that it's okay for us to innovate. In fact, innovation is what is required when we fail, to change the established process in some way that gets us a step closer to our goal. With Edison, every one of those 6,000 attempts was unique, from human hair to bamboo to carbonized cotton. Edison's lab exhausted the natural world as they knew it. They went through metals that they knew and metals they had to figure out what they didn't know about. And his attempt was just a cascade of innovation. Every time he tried a new filament, they learned. And so it is with us. We have to learn from our failures as well as our successes. As a Brazen creative, we have to look for ways to innovate, especially if we haven't reached our goal. In innovating, we begin to think differently. Einstein reminds us that doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is one definition of insanity. But if Edison had listened to the popular voices of his time, he would have given up. People thought he was insane for trying 6,000. Just imagine he's on attempt 2498. Who's talking to him and saying, you'll never get it? You've already tried 2,497 times, bruh. And he's like, it's not the right filament if it doesn't meet the criteria I've set. And so he kept at it. So he gets to attempt number 3792. He's still not there. He's not even 2/3 of the way there yet. And he's getting more pressure now. You're wasting too much time. You're wasting too much money. He innovated again. On attempt 5999. Bro, you're almost at 6,000. When are you going to just give this up? Just quit now. Nope. I'm not going to quit. And after 6,000 attempts, he finally found the filament that we use today, or a version of it. It sparked a revolution that lit homes all across the world, literally. But if he had given up after 1,000 tries or 2,000 tries, we'd never know about it. In Tap the Gas Field, that's the kind of energy we're tapping into. That's why it's a gas field, because there's mad energy in this process. But you have to tap into it and bring that energy to the surface. And once you bring it to the surface, the E is for elevate. You elevate yourself in the process of innovation. You elevate and look at what you've done and what you're going to do, and you figure it out and you make it work. And the challenge here is that in elevating, you have to be above where you were before, so you can look at it with the right lens, the right perspective, and understand what it is you're doing and not doing. You have to be careful that you don't fall into the trap of thinking that you do the exact same thing again, it'll work differently. Innovate, elevate, and learn your lesson. In the military, we have entire divisions in each department dedicated to lessons learned. We have an entire schoolhouse where we just talk about lessons learned. That's how important they are to the military. Do not repeat the mistakes of the past, they say. We look at exercises and wars and battles and all kinds of contingencies, and we figure out what things we can learn from those, and we bring them out. And here's what each service does that's really amazing. They write it down. They write down the lessons learned. The most powerful repository of lessons learned resides in the United States military, because we're one of the few entities who actually does it consistently. And what's unfortunate is if we would read those lessons learned, we'd be light years ahead of where we are today. But at least we're writing them down for posterity. And some of the most innovative people in the military today are people who go back to those lessons learned and read them. And they learn so much because they're so well studied and so well parsed and so well analyzed and broken down. Those lessons learned are the foundation for an entire change in how people see the world. To tap the gas field is to tap into that kind of energy too. The D in gas field is for discussion. You take your attempt to the next level when you have a discussion with people who've been there, done that. If you really want to solidify the change that trying to achieve a goal created, you have to discuss it with people who are bigger than you, better than you, smarter than you, who've achieved what you're setting out to do, or something like what you've set to do, or they are on a parallel track than you. You might be the expert to them in another arena, but they're the expert to you. Those discussions are the most valuable part of this process, because before you go on to the goal, they're going to challenge you to make sure that you've gone through the process properly, and that you've elevated beyond that place where you once were when you started the process. So each attempt in the gas field allows you to see the flaws and the failure and teach yourself how to keep going up. Without the discussion, the process is incomplete. We Brazen Creatives know that. I'm creating a community of Brazen Creatives to do just that, so that we have an opportunity to discuss amongst ourselves why we didn't achieve what we set out to do, and how we can improve ourselves and elevate ourselves to do it. I ask you to have a fresh notebook. Part of the reason why is because I ask you these reflection questions. Part of it is because you'll be scratching down things that I talk about during the time I speak, and because you're going to have some eureka moments, 2 o'clock in the morning moments, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, walking in the park moments. And I want you to scribble those down too, because those are important. And the reason why is because you're going to begin to reflect on these things, and some of the things you're going to reflect on, you're going to want to talk it out. And so I'm creating a community of Brazen Creatives for that purpose, but also understand that it's not limited to us. There are people in your life right now who would love to talk to you about the things that matter to you. And those people are going to have rich and powerful discussions with you that elevate you even more. So when you tap the gas field, you really understand this powerful concept of goal, attempt, success or failure, innovate, elevate, learn your lesson, discuss it. And then you go all the way back to goal setting and start over there. And you can do that once, or you can do it many times. In some laboratories, they do it several times an hour, several times a minute. Now, I understand that sometimes you can't write down every lesson learned in the heat of the moment. I understand that. Mentally catalog it and save it for the end of the day or at the end of the period when you can really get down to it and you write it out. Everything you can remember. Don't do, redo, try again, make it work, don't stop, don't quit. What worked, what didn't work, why didn't work, and what you can do to try it again in a better way. Those lessons learned are that important. Write them down. Similarly, we're going to talk about the reflection questions. And like I did in the last one, I'm going to go a little slower than I did last time, just like I did last time. And I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself. Tap the gas field is a really powerful way to see almost every endeavor in your life. But to get there from here, you're going to have to think it through and see how it applies. This is a great way for you to achieve what you say you want. But to do it, you have to be willing to go through a deliberate process of goal setting, goal review, and then goal discussion. Here are the reflection questions. Take your time, listen, and as we've done before, 1 day for listening to me, 1 day to think, 1 day to write. I hope these questions give you a good amount of thought for the day of just reflecting, just thinking. Here are your 5 questions I want you to answer in your journal before you proceed to the last lesson. What was the last goal that kept you up at night, thinking about how you would achieve it? Was it personal or professional? If it was professional, was it something that you would have done for free? And if not, why not? On that specific goal, did you assess your success or failure by your own standard or by someone else's? And if it was someone else's, did that standard help you innovate or just achieve the goal set for you? And how did it feel to meet that goal? Number 3, think about the last failed attempt at something personal. How did you feel when you didn't achieve what you set out to do? Did you try again? Why? Or why not? What motivated you to try that in the first place? Number 4, look at your current to-do list. Pick the most important item. How would you tap the gas field with it? And last, number 5, to create a habit, you need to repeat this several times each week for several weeks. What one area of your personal or professional life could you use this method to make iterative improvements that help you express your EQI? We're almost done. The next lesson is the namesake lesson, Awaken to Brazen Creativity. And if you've been with me this far and you've gone through the first 5 lessons, you understand how important it is to get this last lesson. But I'll tell you something. You're a Brazen Creative already because you're willing to get this far down the road. And part of the process of being a Brazen Creative is challenging convention. And starting from lesson 1, when we looked at that terrible scale that measures our successes and failures, all the way to where we are today and tapping the gas field, we're set, we're primed to awaken to Brazen Creativity. I look forward to seeing you in that last lesson. It's going to be a doozy. See you soon.